All right, everybody, welcome back to World History 1, where we're going to be continuing our series on the ancient civilizations. Today, we're going to be taking a look at two civilizations. That would be ancient India and ancient China. So, obviously, we're starting with India first. So, I want you to take a look at these maps here, especially the one that's labeled. Get a look at some of these geographical features here. They're all very important to how India develops, and we'll be talking about a number of these things today. So, to begin, let's take a look at some of the characteristics, like kind of our timeline here. We're looking at the Indus Valley civilization coming into existence about 7,000 years ago. First signs of urbanization, the first real great Indian cities of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Towns are going to be established all over the place, cities all over the place. We're going to talk about the script, the writing system that was developed there. We're going to be talking about the Aryan people, not the Nazi Aryans, but the actual real Aryans. And we're going to be talking about how we're going to see some different conquests happening in India in ancient times. So let's talk about the geography first. So India is located in southern Asia, South Central Asia to be exact. India is known as a subcontinent. It is its own tectonic plate that is slammed up against Asia. And there are two main mountain ranges that are formed because of this, like, crushing between the two plates. The Hindu Kush Mountains, which are the western border of India. So that is, if you're looking at the map or one of these maps, it is this right here, up here. And then the Himalayas, which is in the northeastern side. That is the mountain range where, like, Mount Everest is located. There is also the Khyber Pass, which cuts through the Hindu Kush Mountains. It gets you into the rest of Asia. There is the Indus River, which is like the birthplace of Indian culture and civilization, which is in northwestern India. It would be like basically modern day Pakistan today. And then there is the Ganges River, which is in eastern India, and that is a very religiously important river in India. Now, India is also known for monsoons. These are a very, very windy storm system that is combined with a lot of rain. And these storms can last for months at a time, where it's just like on and off raining nonstop. You get a lot of floods that happen because of this, which leads to, mudslides, landslides, things like that, where there's a lot of destruction. So they have to adapt to that type of environment over the course of India's history, to where it's not as bad today as it once was. So yeah, lots and lots of bad weather. All right, so Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, these were the first two major cities to be discovered and excavated by archaeologists in India. We found from these sites that they were very well developed cities, a lot of social conditions, and it was very comparable to Sumeria and the Babylonians and the Egyptians with how sophisticated they were. All right. And what would make you think that that is possible? Because of this urban planning. Urban means city, so they planned out their cities. Each city had a citadel, a fortress that is, built to overlook the city and act as a center of government, a place to protect the people should they be attacked. The cities were laid out in a grid pattern. So lots of right sharp angles, like no crazy interweaving winding streets. It's all cubed out like lines, like a graph. And the houses had wells for water in them. They had sewer systems for getting rid of all the waste, shall we say. Uh, They had ovens that were made in there in the houses, so there wasn't like some weird communal thing, or they just cooked over a fire in the yard. Everything was planned out the way that it would be like today. Some of the buildings would be several stories tall. You didn't see a lot of that in the ancient world. There would be enclosed courtyards, so like a fenced-in backyard type of deal. Like you didn't see that in a lot of ancient housing, but that is something that they were doing in India. So like you can see a comparison between Mohenjo-daro and New York City, like from today. There is like, well, this is probably 20 years ago because the Twin Towers are still standing in this photo, but you see the grid patterns like checkerboards for all the planning for urban development. Now, the writing system of ancient India is called, they use a system called pictograms, where they use pictures to keep track of what they're saying. It's We don't really know what any of this says, though. The translations have been lost. All attempts to decipher it or translate it have failed, so we just don't know what half of this stuff even says. So yeah, like we found it on pottery, on stamp seals, which is like how you would like you pour wax over an envelope and you stamp it so that people know who it's from, type of thing, like you see in medieval movies. You know. Now, we see craft specialization happening in India. Uh, People who are making bronze and copper into tools, so like metal workers, people who are weaving cloth, people who are potters, they're making pottery, clay pots for carrying water, storing food, things like that. Mathematicians start to like become a thing. So you can kind of blame India for math a little bit because they're one of the oldest cultures to incorporate mathematics. Dentistry is going to get a start in India. Not the only place, but it's one of the earliest places that have been found to start dentist work for keeping our teeth together. All right. Now, the Indus civilization is going to collapse because around 3,500 years ago, 1500 BCE, a very large group of nomadic, so people who moved around a lot, cattle herders called the Aryans, migrated into the area from Central Asia. Uh, Possibly from the Caucasus Mountains, which is like southern Russia, eventually making their way through like modern day Iraq and Iran, and making their way down further south into India, going through the Khyber Pass. Now, they have, by the year 1000, expanded into the Ganges Valley. So they have taken over northern India, and they introduced the caste system into India. Now, the caste system is something that we talk about a little bit more later on, but basically it is a classification system where there is a series of colored dots that people would have on their foreheads that identifies what social class they are a part of and what job type they would have. So it's a way of keeping track of who is who and where they belong. Now, we are also going to see, like, when the Indus civilization dies, we're going to have the Aryans move in, but there's also they're going to be in charge for about 1,000 years until the Persians invade in 530 BCE. And the Persians we won't talk about for a while still, but just know that they are one of the most powerful and important empires that we get to talk about over the course of this class. All right, so that's India for now. We will come back to them at a later time. And now we're going to take our first look at China. So ancient China. We have a couple of rivers that are important, mainly the Yellow River and the Yangtze River, which are the two that are in central China. We have the Great Wall here, which is very important in Chinese history, but we will see when we get to that. Now, some characteristics. We have the culture starting to thrive in the Yellow River Valley, and how towns and villages and cities will eventually be rising. We're going to see the rise of the Qi Dynasty, which the XIA is basically pronounced Qi. They will give way to the Shang Dynasty. We're going to see the development of writing in China under the Shang. They're going to move the capital around a little bit. We're also going to see, the reign of one of the first great emperors, a guy named Wu Ding of the Shang Dynasty in China. And when the Zhou Dynasty replaces them, so we're going to see some of that dynastic change that we were seeing a little bit here and there, like with Egypt. Now, the Shang Dynasty, we're looking at a map of China. They basically get a bit of central China here. It's a pretty big area. They are going to be one of the first civilizations in China to use walled cities. So they're going to unite a bunch of walled cities together into one kingdom. And one of the things that some of the stuff they're going to introduce is they're going to have lower taxes, which will give them the ability to have people wanting to follow them. So they have absolute authority. So no one questions their laws or whatever they want done for the ruling family. They are going to stop building projects that are just draining resources. They're only going to build what is necessary for the success of the dynasty and of their kingdom. So writing, the use of bronze and other metals, religion, and architecture are all going to be used during the Shang Dynasty. One of the interesting things that we're going to also see is the use of oracle bones. This is basically bone that records and written records were kept on, and they are going to be just inscribed with writing on animal bones and keep track of different topics, the weather, how the harvests went each season, things like that. All right, eventually they're going to give way to the Zhou Dynasty. We're going to see them take over the Shang territory and expand it further north. And they are going to have what is called the Mandate of Heaven, which is an interesting idea. And it's going to basically say and be defined as the Zhao have the blessing of the gods, the right to rule by heaven, because that's how they were able to come to power, because they had the support of the gods. And there's a weird cycle that goes with it. So a new dynasty is born, a new emperor is in that dynasty. Everything's working out pretty well. The government is going to then slowly start to become corrupt, normally because of money and power, which will be followed by famine and natural disasters. People are going to start losing their faith in the government. They're starting to get tired of the problems because the empire's not wanting to fix them. The dynasty is then starting to be thought of as having lost the mandate of heaven, that right to rule by the gods. So then that emperor who's lost the favor is going to be defeated in battle and overthrown, and a new dynasty is put in place. So it's a cycle that the mandate of heaven goes through. That is how they explain these new changes and new dynasties that come into the ruling class of China and become the new emperors, the new ruling families. All right. The last thing we're going to talk about for this intro to Chinese history is the Silk Roads. Now, in 130 BCE estimated, the Silk Road is officially opened. And this is one of the largest trade networks that has ever existed in human history. It goes from China all the way to the Mediterranean Sea and the Black Sea. and it goes down to the Indian Ocean. You can see how widespread it is. It goes all over Western Asia and into the Middle East. So this is how we get a lot of trade between China and Europe over the next, 1,000, 2,000 years of human history. Like parts of it are still used today as roadways for commerce. Now, it's called the Silk Roads because of silk. Silkworms produce silk, which is a very fine thread that is woven into very soft and luxurious cloth that can be made into very expensive clothing. Now, the ruling classes of the different kingdoms between China and in Europe and everywhere in between, the kings and chieftains, the emperors, they all want silk and satin clothing to show their wealth and just show how powerful they are and how rich they are. So a lot of silk is being moved back and forth around on these roads, and it is how the road gets its name, the Silk Road. But China is going to hold on to the secret of making silk because they know how much money they can make from it, so they only will trade finished product. They will never want to trade the worms or the secrets of how they actually make it. So that's a pretty interesting little tidbit right there for you. And that is going to do it for today. Be sure to come back next time where we will continue our look at ancient civilizations.